be honest, it's got to be a boring Sunday afternoon if you're on eBay looking for Detica mugs.
I don't know.
That's a very particular. That's a very particular search day.
Welcome to Cloud Realities, an original podcast from Capgemini. And this week, a conversation show about modern-day intelligence and the increasing complexity of the associated cyber considerations. I'm Dave Chapman.
I'm Esmee van der Giezen.
And I'm Rob Kernahan.
And I'm delighted to say joining us for this conversation is Chris Carter, who's the Director of Key Accounts and Australia at BAE Systems. Hey, Chris.
Hello, great to be here.
How are you?
I'm very good, thanks.
Very good. Your namesake is the guy that made the X-Files. I've just realised that.
It is, and also a very successful author.
Right. You're in good company. You're in good company.
I mean, that's you got X-Files and murder novels.
Yep.
I mean, that's quite a dark heritage to the name, isn't it? I see there's a link there.
Like the X-Files, though.
Oh, it's Ace.
I'm sort of considering a rewatch of the X. I haven't seen the X-Files since it finished.
Do you think, though, that would become horribly dated? I mean, Gillian Anderson, David Duchovny, brilliant chemistry on screen, great sort of writing, but is it one of those 90s shows when you go back to, you go, I regret rewatching this?
So I think I have two potential issues with it. I have actually thought about this.
Go on.
The two potential issues with it, I think, are, one, it went off the boil anyway.
Yeah.
Right. So after about season 5 or 6 or whatever it was, especially when Mulder and Scully weren't in it, like you do ask what the point was of continuing the X-Files.
Well, it was the chemistry that was literally the show, wasn't it?
That is the show.
Yeah.
But then the other thing is, modern TV isn't like 23 episodes a season for 9 seasons, is it? So just sheer volume means you're going to have some chaff in there. So no, I think you got to go in eyes wide open, I reckon.
I reckon. It's like, I always wanted to rewatch Twin Peaks. But I
have done that.
Now, you go back, is it as good?
Twin Peaks is maybe even better, I think, now.
Is it?
Especially since the return. Have you seen the third season?
No, I haven't.
You haven't seen Twin Peaks,
Are you
my
taking
friend?
a story than just like munge it? It's like Lost. It lost its way.
Oh,
See
Twin Peaks is a wholly different kettle of fish. Have you seen Twin Peaks, Chris?
I have not seen Twin Peaks.
Have you seen Twin Peaks?
No,
It's
I don't
another
think
David
so.
Duchovny special. Is it David Duchovny in Twin Peaks?
No, it's
Kyle
MacLachlan.
That's it, Kyle MacLachlan. That's it. Sorry.
I think there's a whole. I think you.
There's a podcast
I think you
in this,
two
Dave.
need homework. You get homework to start
That's it.
working your way through
You
Twin Peaks,
came on
and we'll
the
build it into
podcast,
the
and
show.
now you've got to do homework.
All I can keep thinking about is Peaky Blinders. That's the only image I have in my head, but that's probably
it's quite
far
different.
away from.
Thomas Shelby.
Oh, is that because of the peak thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, super different.
Yeah, okay.
Super different.
Very different. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like opposite ends of the TV spectrum.
It happens in my head all the time.
As if that wasn't confusing enough, Robert.
Well, speaking of TV,
Yeah.
Black Mirror, Charlie Brooker, did you see the latest season? Get through them
No,
all.
that's not about mirrors.
No, it's
Just,
not.
just to be clear.
Is it black
Just to
though?
be clear, no. There's an episode where they install some software in the lady's head, and then, they start playing adverts and all that sort of stuff, and it goes
excellent.
through.
It was an excellent
Right.
episode, yeah.
But it led to a confusion, which was lots of untapped potential in the human brain.
Yes.
And
I'll go before we go on. Chris, have you seen that episode of Black Mirror?
I haven't seen that episode. I have seen Black Mirror.
So
but not the episode,
so you can, I mean, we all struggle to keep up with Rob's confusion, but just to give you a fighting chance.
Yeah.
So in the episode, and no spoilers for those who haven't seen it, but broadly the setup is a woman kind of has a brain aneurysm or something like that, and they can treat that by putting like a chip in her head. And they do that, and it's like a medical miracle, and everyone's delighted. But then the company starts to monetize the chip, and if you want to use that, like on a free or freemium, you would then get ads that came into like you. So you would, in the middle of it, you'd be like, "Hey, have you ever used, the Apple iPhone?" They'd be like that. So that's the setup of the show. So on that, Rob, go on.
okay, thanks for that context, Dave.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for, Rob.
So lots of actual science going into the human brain interface. And if you were offered the opportunity to rent your capacity in your brain for compute power,
Yes.
like ultimate distributed cloud,
Yeah.
and you plug in, would you do it?
Absolutely not. Under no circumstances. That seems completely open to abuse.
But if it's all safe and secure, and they're just using a bit of your brain,
Well, that's what they bought into on the show. So
I know, she couldn't
opening
sleep.
with Black Mirror, you telegraphed your answer.
Because what I'd love to do is install like a Legacy's 90 ERP system in your head, because that would be the ultimate irony with you.
It would be being in hell. It'd be like being trapped in hell.
You know, if like, £500 a week's worth of compute.
£500?
I don't know, whatever the number would be. What would you go for? For me to install a Legacy
Right,
ERP
what's your
system
price
in your
point?
brain, what's your price
What's
point?
the price point?
I want a week's worth of compute.
A week's worth
for a week's
of
worth of
compute.
compute for an enterprise. What are you going to charge me?
And is this likely to be like just a 1 week one-off, or is it an ongoing?
No, your brain's like a
service?
spot
Subscription.
instance. They can turn it on and off when they want.
Yeah. So when it popped up,
So you know when
I
you
get
watch that
paid.
crap TV Under Deck or whatever it is about the stuff
you
or
love that? Below the Deck?
He loves this.
Yes,
right.
guilty
So when you're
pleasure.
watching that,
That
and
is a TV
That
show.
is what I am.
Yes.
and you don't need much processing power to watch it,
Yeah,
it's all
yeah.
wasted. Rent it out.
It would cost a lot of money. I'm thinking along.
You're gonna
I'm
price
thinking
yourself
in
out of
six
market here.
digits.
You price yourself out
I
of the
am.
market, aren't you?
And then not only that, and then an unlimited level of insurance around them abusing the situation.
Yeah, they're not going to buy that.
Oh. Well, I'm okay with it. I'm okay pricing myself out of it.
So-
Because I would not be an early adopter of this technology.
But if you think about it, easy access to money, and you do it, is
Yeah.
it then something that people would do? And that's the bit I'm confused about. Or would the morality of it go, I don't know.
I actually do think people
If you
would do
could,
it.
they probably would, wouldn't they?
Yeah. I do think people would not consider the security ramifications or, whatever it might be, because they would be horrendous.
But the whole theory of you come to work and you plug in and defeat the language interface, the keyboard, the mouse, and you're directly communicating with it, that is ongoing as a scientific sort of
Yeah.
research. So when we get there, then how do you do it all?
An element of, I've got to say, I'm not even thrilled about the idea of just even a chip to remote control my computer. I don't love the idea of, I have to say. But actually renting out my processing capacity,
Bet you 15 years, that's up on the cards.
I'm not doubting it might happen. Anyway, that is a future reality right
But
there.
that's the confusion, isn't it? We have
We'll
to
come
wait.
back to that in 600 episodes' time. On that note, Chris, thank you so much again for joining us today. Let's start with understanding a little bit about the world of digital intelligence. Specifically, what does that mean within the context that you work in?
Sure. So people will often be familiar with BAE Systems as a provider of large platforms, ships, aircraft, armored vehicles. But increasingly, the important thing is less the platform itself, but it's the data that it can collect, how that platform is then connected to and integrated with other systems, and the decisions that can then be made with that data. So my part of the group is really all about the integration of data from multiple platforms and capabilities, ensuring that is secure against adversaries, and ensuring that better decisions can be made more effectively, whether that's by the military, but also by law enforcement and security agencies in that broader context of national resilience as well as just defence.
It must be quite chaotic because data is coming from literally everywhere, isn't it? You've got all these platforms, there's loads, there's just stuff out there collecting it all. It's sort of the scale and the size. It must be quite a challenge to just be able to find the bit that you're interested in and go there. And I suppose that's the first big thing, isn't it? About normally when people think about data, it's more static than what you deal with. This is like high velocity stuff. So it's like, and then just the sheer, what do I process? How do I disseminate the information and send it on? It's like, it's really complex challenge as you face it.
Absolutely. And the challenge will be very different depending on the nature of the particular mission. So you could look at something like missile defense. You have to be able to make a decision. Is this a threat within the space of seconds to be able to achieve a countermeasure against that?
Yeah.
But in other contexts, it might be maybe with law enforcement worrying about how do you appropriately and securely retain evidential data that might have to last for decades because it's been used to secure a conviction in court. So there's a huge variety there, but certainly thinking about the aspects which are perhaps not unique to defence and security, but which are particularly acute challenges is what we spend a lot of our time doing.
Perhaps before we go into that in a bit more detail, maybe just take us through what the last 20 or so years of evolution in this space has looked like for you. I understand you were in a smaller organization to start with that was cyber-centric.
Yep.
So maybe take us on your journey.
Yeah. So I've been with the company for 17 years, and I started in what was at the time a medium-sized consultancy focused on data analytics, and what's now called cybersecurity, although often was called information assurance at the time.
Oh, I remember those days.
Information assurance. Yeah,
They were innocent, more innocent.
Indeed.
Yeah, when the threats weren't quite as sizable as they are today.
And the work that we did initially was sometimes seen as being a bit peripheral. So the important thing was the big platform. It was the aircraft or the ship. The huge transformation over that time is that data and intelligence has become central, not peripheral. And we see that when we're at major events. It's one of the things I was reflecting on. We used to be the little stand in the corner that nobody quite understood what we did over there.
Security state in the corner. Yeah, security, where are they over there? Yeah.
But we're now positioned really centrally because it's about how do we pull together and integrate that data from across the different domains.
So this presumably is certainly about I would imagine, evolution of technology over that period. But it's the abuse of technology, isn't it? And the use of technology in nefarious ways that must have driven that change in importance.
Yeah, and I think as we see the adoption of new technology, it will always be utilized in ways other than its makers intended.
It was the first thing with AI. AI is cool, and then the hackers started going, AI is cool. You're right, for exactly the reverse, wasn't it? It was a sort of, it didn't take long.
No. And so there's a constant process there of adapting, understanding for our customers simultaneously what are the threats that this new technology poses, be that AI enabling misinformation, but also what are the opportunities for our mission. So AI can simultaneously enable misinformation at huge scale, whilst also enabling an organization to conduct open source intelligence operations to identify and respond to that misinformation much more effectively than you ever could just with human analysts.
Right. And the changing nature of all of that, for all of the various different reasons we've just alluded to, has led to, presumably, that's what's got us to concepts like MDI, or I believe it is multi-domain integration. So do you just want to sort of set out what that means in sort of terms for the listener who might not have heard of such a thing?
Sure. So multi-domain integration is a term that's used for integration of the different operational domains in a defense context. So the word domain, as we might come back to, is quite overloaded with different meanings.
Yeah.
In this context, air, sea, land, space, cyber sometimes, although a bit disputed whether that counts as a separate domain by some people. But the multi-domain integration point is therefore about the fact that the threats that you're trying to counter are not going to be limited to one of those domains.
Yeah.
So you take, say, space, for example, as an operational domain. It's also enabling connectivity for ships, soldiers, vehicles, aircraft. It's enabling sensing. And another huge transformation, of course, has been the proliferation of space-based capability and what that means in terms of data and the coverage of data globally. So you can no longer think, if you are developing a new defense capability, about just a particular platform and the systems on that platform. You have to think about how is this going to be integrated with everything else across those different domains in the battle space. But I think importantly, and you also have to think about the fact that you won't necessarily have connectivity across those domains. So it's really important to achieve that integration. But you need to be very conscious when you're deploying new technology that the links you have to other assets could be denied, degraded, could be low bandwidth, could be very high latency. And as one of the particular complexities that we would face, it's when you take a technology that's been developed for that similar kind of data integration in perhaps a commercial context. We've got so used to abstracting away from where's the compute
the actual
located
use.
that I'm running this workload on.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing about cloud. You don't need to worry about that.
Yeah.
Well, if you are sitting at the end of a radio frequency data link on an island somewhere and you have an enemy conducting jamming against you, then you really, really do need to care about where that compute is, where the workload is running, and what are the implications.
And is that causing a proliferation of edge? So you've got enough near you so that when that does happen, I can still maintain, the ability to compute stuff. Because we normally think about cloud as being, we're going to centralize, but now actually there's this compute everywhere type thing. Is that, and the sort of like, you take your compute with you as you go?
That's one key aspect of it, certainly. It's the ability to do that sort of processing at the edge. Again, space is an interesting example here. Often the constraint with sensing from space is not how much data you can collect, it's the bandwidth you've got to transmit that back to the ground when you're passing over a ground station. So thinking about how you can use things like AI at the edge to identify what is the data that is going to be of most interest to the commander on the ground, and then transmitting only that information directly to that commander becomes transformational.
That has a huge difference when you're talking about quality versus quantity. If you have AI help you decide, like, okay, we need this data instead of, let's just pull it all in and then we'll see, what we can make out of it.
Well, we often talk about sending data from the edge can be very expensive. Sending it from space is even more expensive. So you sort of like this and make sure it's right and send just what you need, isn't it? It's the be a bit sharper about how you think about it.
But does it mean that you really know that you have high quality data? Because I think in the world of data, it's always been, up till now, it's the discussion, but the quality of the data is like, we need to start there first.
Data quality, absolutely really important. But you have the extra challenge in many of the operations that we support that the data might be poor quality, not just because it's inherently technical challenging problem, but because somebody is deliberately hiding or obfuscating what they're doing, running a deception operation, running a false flag operation to make you think that something else is happening.
Right.
So the level of assurance and trust that you can have over the data, certainly when you're making decisions about perhaps to arrest somebody or to conduct some military operation, becomes hugely important.
We often have a chap on the show called Dave Snowden, Connecting Framework. He talks about the corruption of mass open data sets as well, where people very subtly change it, that then forces the systems to maybe act or decide in a different way. You got a viewpoint on that, and if it's becoming quite prolific? Because, if you take... there's lots of use in open data, but if it's bad, then, how do you tell it's bad? I suppose it's a sort of...
There's potentially quite a lot of concerns around that, I think, and also in terms of when that data is then being used as training data.
That's
for
right.
AI models.
Exactly that.
And I know you've been talking about sovereign AI on the podcast, and what does that really mean?
Yeah.
You have to have some real concern about are there attack paths and channels for somebody to...
It feels like it does open up a number of surfaces that perhaps didn't exist before.
Yeah, and the non-deterministic nature of the behavior, which has some big advantages in terms of capability you can deliver, just makes the problem for somebody who's focused on security in a let's say a government role who's responsible for accrediting a system. Well, how do you assure or accredit the behavior of a system that is inherently non-deterministic?
Right.
That rubs up against policy problems that are very, very difficult.
Well, you got that thing where you go, you've trained it, and then you ask it a question, it does one thing, you do it again, it does something else, it does something else. You can never actually be sure which way it's going to go. And especially in this context, that can be quite... There's loads of advantage out there, but it's just how do you trust it? I suppose it comes down to that. How can I assure that this is going to do the right thing when it's needed, when it's, like you say, time critical?
One of the things, while we're in this cyber domain, that I wanted to touch on and just get your perspective on is, let's say over the last 20 years, to your point earlier, actually, just stepping back from that, to your point earlier, you said that there are known domains and then sometimes there's cyber as well. And that's in debate in some way. Why is that in debate when you actually look at what's been going on over the last 20 years in the world of cyber? It is quite clear that there is a lot of activity there.
Yep.
But what's your perspective on why we are where we are, and what do we do?
So I think everyone now agrees that cyber is an important domain in the sense that operations that are conducted in the cyber domain, defensively and offensively, have huge implications.
Yeah, absolutely.
What I think is in dispute, if you like, is it the right answer to consider cyber as a separate domain to the others, given they are so tightly
it has to
integrated
permeate through, doesn't it,
and
as a
coupled.
concept? Yeah.
Because I think the concern is if you treat cyber as a separate domain, you run the risk of creating another operational silo.
Yeah, silos away. Yes,
Yeah.
I get you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at the moment, is it literally drawn as like a horizontal across the others? If you were to do a basic whiteboard diagram of that?
It is often depicted in that way.
Yeah.
That's the classic security, when everybody draws the diagram and security says, where's security? And then somebody says, we'll just stick it as a horizontal down the side. Isn't it? It's the classic sort of, how do you respond to that?
Given we're not on film, as Rob said, as Rob said,
I
that
drew
he drew a vertical
there.
line. I mean, that's the kind of misinformation. Watch out for him.
Yeah. Dave.
Trying to confuse us all with that. The world of cyber then from your perspective. So when you look at cyber just through a commercial lens of any big commercial organization, it has gone from, to use what you were saying earlier, from information insurance, like just another role in the IT department and maybe with a bit of audit or something, to, either enormous services that organizations buy in, or minimum you have to set up your own control centers. And it's a very, very sophisticated operation today. Like you're dealing with business risk, you're dealing with very cutting edge technology a lot of the time, and enormous complexities of data.
Yep.
Do you see that any different in the space that you're working in, or are the parallels quite similar?
I would say it's that, but even more so.
Right. Yeah.
If you're a company, it's clearly important to have that protection in place.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a business risk versus investment decision about how much protection is it reasonable to put in place.
Right,
Are we compliant with regulation? That would usually be important.
Yeah.
Are we more protected than our peers in this sector, such that a criminal group is probably going to go after them rather than us? That might be the way you would frame the problem.
Yes.
But if you are a
So it's not that you've got no risk. It's just that you've got less risk than your competitor or your neighbour.
And we see that criminals will tend to target weaker.
Don't be the gazelle at the back. It's that classic joke where the two guys see the lion coming at them, and one starts to put their trainers on, and the other one says, "Well, you never outrun a lion." He goes, "I don't have to outrun the lion; I just have to outrun you."
Yeah,
That's a security paradigm, isn't it?
But if you are a government or a military organisation, then you have to know that there are hostile actors who will commit huge resources specifically to target you, regardless of how hard you've worked and how much investment you put in. So what we see as different is that there are certain capabilities, types of hardware or software solutions, which don't really make economic sense for a company, but which are necessary if you're protecting secret or top secret information.
I hear you.
So things like disconnected cloud environments. You'd say, well, doesn't that defeat the whole point of having a cloud environment, the fact that you're disconnecting it? There's a different balance of risk versus cost you might apply.
Right.
And one of the other areas that we work in, which I think is an illustrative example, is something called cross-domain solutions. This is importantly, and to add to your, I think you have the point of the podcast around things which can be confusing. The word domain there means something different from multi-domain integration.
Right.
So we're talking here about domains of trust or domains of classification. So more similar to perhaps a network domain in an IT context. And so a cross-domain solution is a capability that allows you to transfer data between perhaps a secret network and an unclassified network.
But you get, and you see in the industry, if you take a heartbeat of the industry 3 years ago and compare it to where it is today, the cloud service providers are investing huge amounts of money in exactly what you're talking about. So air gap solutions, your own dedicated region. And we see that rising fast, especially when you use the sovereign word.
Yeah.
That's a that's part of the conversation. So yeah, you're absolutely right. 5 years ago, let's not have this conversation. It's not the point of cloud. Now that fragmentation is occurring because it's at the top of everybody's mind about exactly the things you are, about how you protect yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right that those kinds of disconnected cloud environments, sovereign capabilities have become increasingly important, and it drives requirements for a different set of solutions than you'd really need anywhere else. Because we would say it's a disconnected cloud. Actually, it can't be completely disconnected. You still need to be able to
update it. It's a CD. You can come in with a CD and plug it in. It's like, the 1980s.
I would say some of the last uses of floppy disks anywhere in the world has been, at least in the past, for those kinds of data transfer across,
I bet,
classification boundaries.
There's an alarming amount of aircraft that still use floppy disks to update their navigation software. I'm still astounded to this day that it's not a USB key, but it's still a floppy. Did they still make them?
Yep.
Still exist.
No, you sketched a picture, I think, of not only highly complex environments dealing with very sensitive and highly security sensitive issues, but also acting often on the cutting edge of technology, because the people that you're kind of protecting against are also on the cutting edge of technology. How on earth are you finding the right level of skills and capability to maintain what I'm sure are pretty massive operations?
So as with many other sectors, attracting and retaining...
Yeah, it's difficult anyway, yeah.
The advantage that we have in this sector is that sense of mission and purpose.
Yeah.
And I would say for the majority of our people, that's the motivation. It's feeling that you're working on an interesting technical problem, but the reason that you're working on that problem is ultimately protecting your nation, your family from threats.
Is that also your drive?
Yes. Yeah.
But it's the base of intrinsic motivation, isn't it? Purpose, then you got mastery, then you got autonomy. But without the purpose, it's difficult to motivate, isn't it? So it's
Yes. And I thought about that from time to time. What would my job be if I worked in a different sector? Well, probably 80% of it's still going to be looking at financial spreadsheets or having meetings with people. But that underlying driver of the reason that we're doing this is...
Why are we here? Why are we here? Yeah. Often thought about what I'd do if I wasn't in this job, and I'd like to say I'd perfect the line, do you want fries with that?
I actually think you'd be really good at it.
Do you think so?
Big smile, over-enthusiasm.
Over-enthusiastic burger seller.
Yeah, you'd be great at it.
Is it?
But the other thing that occurs to me in terms of the complexity of environment you've just described is the levels of partnership that must be going on between different organizations, a level of urgency in those partnerships. I'm sure an increasing level of digital collaboration. How is all of that developing over time?
Yeah. So that's, I think, another thing that's changed a lot, really in the past sort of 5 to 10 years, has been increasing importance of partnership and collaboration, but also a proliferation of new partnerships. We see, for example, AUKUS as a partnership between 3 nations that are within the Five Eyes, that itself is an important partnership: the US, Canada, UK, Australia, and New Zealand. It's no longer just about, from a defence perspective, NATO as, say, a long-standing partnership organisation in Europe and the North Atlantic. There's the term minilateralism is sometimes used in international relations. So this, bigger than bilateral, but smaller than multilateral.
Minilateral. There's a whole middle level. Did you ever know?
Yeah.
I did not know.
So for 3, 4, 5 partners working together on a particular topic, a particular operation, and that's a trend in geopolitics to do with the alignment of nation states, but it flows through into technology, because it means if you're going to work out how to collaborate and communicate, you need to have an approach that's flexible enough to work with those different contexts.
You're coming from a world where it's sort of like it's my nation state, and now you're working with these multi-nation state. That's got to take a while to get the trust in and the ways of working aligned and everything else. How do you find that from a cultural alignment perspective? I mean, you're just integrating data sets with different taxonomy. That's got to be a nightmare on itself. But then just everybody's trusting everybody to be able to share in that way. That takes years, I would have thought. What's your view on that?
Trust is absolutely the underpinning to a successful collaboration or transformation there, and you have to focus on building that. I think starting with just avoiding misunderstanding and miscommunication. I mean, just some of the words that we use. But even by the time you've got into the same language, the words that we use are not the precise precision of those meanings can vary. So I have one memorable example where a customer handed us a document that was labeled secret. This is an international customer. And our security team therefore thought, okay, we need to handle that like we would if it was a UK secret document that has a whole list of policy constraints around that, where it needs to be stored, how it has to be handled. But we went back and spoke to this actual customer, and by the word secret, they effectively meant what we would think of as just confidential.
Right.
Please try not to leave it on a train.
Yeah.
Best efforts, please.
And by this point, our security team, right, reasonably from their perspective, it's
a very expensive thing
spun
to
up
do.
a whole thing about how we're going to manage this information because of thinking that word would mean the same thing in that different context. So you have to start from there. That really quite, in some ways, quite basic understanding. Sometimes even the things that aren't written down about your assumptions about how things work, and then build up from there to build that trust and then be able to operate.
That's got to be awkward at times, though. But I suppose it takes a lot of patience, and then keep going over it and over it and over it, and you'll build that understanding. But if you're outside that ecosystem and you have to come in like a new starter and things like that, that's got to be a very complicated task as well. It's got to be a specialism to work multi-nation state.
It is. And one of the things I find quite interesting, we talked about talent earlier. Where do we find the talent that we need? Well, certainly we need software engineers. We need people with technical skills, with STEM skills. But some of the most effective and capable people in our organization and in my team have a humanities background. They study history or international relations. And that experience is bringing an understanding and awareness of some of that wider context that is frankly just as important as the technology in making a transformation program work in that kind of partnership environment.
So maybe if we just build on that notion of trust a little bit and delve into what that sort of means, maybe what are the ethics of that? Kind of what are the considerations in there that are perhaps greater than you might see in the more traditional commercial sectors that you have to think about?
Sure. So if we think about, for example, law enforcement agencies who are trying to understand who is the suspect that we may want to go and arrest for this particular crime, the ability of the state to take away someone's liberty is one of the most sort of sensitive things that government does. So really being able to understand and explain the decisions that are being made and the data that's led into those is critical. So explainability of AI is a topic across many domains, many companies and sectors.
Is that the third definition of domain that you just brought into this?
I think that is.
Quite possibly, yeah.
I feel it was.
You weren't
If we
lying.
had more time, I'm sure I could have a few more. But that concept of explainability, I can't think of many areas where it's more important or more critical than in a decision to perhaps arrest or
to impact another human being.
Another human's life.
Yeah.
So understanding how to achieve that level of trust and assurance of that data and that decision, but without applying so many constraints to it that you don't deliver the benefits of automation and efficiency that these technologies promise. It is central to a lot of our work, and we try to apply the expertise that we have from working in these areas for many decades, and a lot of our people are former operators of these sorts of capabilities and really deeply, intimately understand what it takes to do that job. So we often find ourselves playing a role of working with the technology provider to bridge the gap, perhaps, between the operational environment and needs in areas such as explainability of AI, for instance, and what the technology can actually do, what it's capable of, how that can be deployed and used.
So, Chris, hearing you talk about multi-domain integration, data speed, the amount of data, the quality of the data, Are we actually focusing enough on the human capacity to absorb it all? What's your take on that? Are we taking things too fast?
I think the capacity of an operator, or let's say a soldier, to take on a new piece of technology or information, as well as everything else that they're trying to do in an operational environment, is one of the key constraints, certainly. And really thinking about how the technology can be adapted to the ability and capacity of that user in that particular context to take it on is vital to achieve the kind of uptake that you would want. And some element of that will be training and awareness for the user. But from my perspective, a much bigger part of it is making sure that actually the technology is the right fit for that operation, and not trying to force the user to change too much just to make the technology work.
There must be a lot of science that goes into that, about you process the data, you work out what the answer is, how you relay that to the human. Then could be probably in quite a stressful situation. There might be a lot of other information coming in from all over the place. There must be a huge consideration in these. So we've worked out a thing, but now how do we get the human to understand the thing?
Yes, and not within my part of the organization, but my colleagues who work on fast jet aircraft, for example. That's an area where there's been decades of research and refinement of the human factors, because if you're flying at a couple of 100 feet down a Welsh valley and with a tiny amount of leeway to make a decision, understanding the best way to get the right information into the pilot's consciousness so that they can make a decision within a fraction of a second becomes critical. And if we've got more and more information to present to the pilot doesn't have any more capacity to process more than they were already doing.
Still human.
So we have to make that better, but still within the constraints and limitations that we have as humans.
Yeah, and is it then about understanding what it does? But I think it really also is about trusting what it does, trusting what the system is providing you in terms of information.
Well, you get that where a system presents you information and people argue with it.
Yeah.
Classic, my dad used to argue with the sat-nav and say that's not the best route to that destination type thing. But then you take this context and you go, you've got to really trust what you're being told. Because if you're going to make a decision that's a split second off the back of it, there's a lot of, you can't say you forgot to carry the two in that equation.
Yeah. And I know you've discussed on the podcast previously around things like agentic AI and how that can be embedded and implemented into organizations. And there's, I think, some interesting analogies about, well, how do we learn to trust other people? And other people telling us information, and do we then act on that? And is there something about that interaction which is quite different from what we've historically done in trusting or not what a computer tells us, that actually with agentic AI wouldn't be somewhere in between?
Is there an argument that an agent is more predictable and more trustable in that way, and can maybe consume data faster
than a person?
Yeah.
I think so. It's somewhere perhaps, yes, closer to a person, but for all the complexity that we've built into some of these agents, probably still less complicated than a
human.
Yeah,
I think that's almost certainly true.
And trust, of course, of people and decisions that they make, central to operating in the secure world that we do a lot of our work in. You think about security clearances. We have the idea of, can you trust this individual to be able to handle sensitive information based on what you know about them? Perhaps there are equivalent considerations you could give to an AI agent that help think about that problem in a different way as a non-deterministic system compared to information assurance as it was before. And, well, how do I know it's a completely predictable outcome?
There's that whole new thing where they attack the software supply chain. So before it even gets, the open source library that's compromised and 500,000 people download it and then deploy it in their software, and it's all signed and certed as it goes out the door, you sort of go, well, how do I trust the supply chain that made the agent that then I'm going to deploy into that type of context? Well, where did it come from? Who wrote it? What's inside it? And has it been corrupted?
Yes. What data was it trained on? And we would say the majority of, I think that the most sophisticated and damaging cyber attacks we now see are supply chain based. And if we open up, supply chains are complicated enough as it is. without thinking that the supply chain really needs to include all the data sets that agent was trained on, as well as actually who developed it.
Sometimes it's easy just to put a human back in the loop and go, they'll check it. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, you're talking about trust in these partnerships that you already mentioned, especially across abroad, different cultures, but also between civil, military, infrastructure. What mindset shifts do you think are still missing to get those partnerships up to the level that is needed?
Looking at government and companies working together in the interests of, say, national resilience, making sure that there's an understanding across that divide. It's sometimes there, but it's often missing. So an understanding perhaps from the government side that these are still commercial entities that still have to turn a profit in order to survive. And an understanding on the commercial side of that mission and purpose that perhaps goes beyond just the day-to-day operations of the business, and recognizing perhaps the importance of their organization within the critical national infrastructure and what an adversary or a threat actor might see as a vulnerability.
It was a COVID learning, wasn't it? With globalization, that we suddenly discovered that lots of little things that can be denied can kill massive systems, supply chain, just for the basics like food and textiles and whatever else. So you apply it to this incredibly complicated domain.
Rolls.
Hey?
Toilet rolls.
Toilet rolls. Who would have thought it? What I still don't get is why people started hoarding them. Somebody somewhere still got a garage full of toilet rolls from 2021, haven't they?
Yeah, they've turned into that, that company online where you can buy a box of like 400 toilet rolls.
Yeah, it's like COVID hangover.
They've monetized that over purchasing. They'll be like, I know, we should just sell them in 500 roll batches.
I mean, let's be honest. Who buys 500 toilet rolls? Where'd you put them? In garage.
Yeah.
They go, but there was that. It's the behaviour as well. When things change, people you can witness quite odd behaviour depending on what impacts arrive.
Certainly, behaviour that becomes unpredictable. It becomes unpredictable quickly.
Yeah, you said
people become influenced easily and become unpredictable as a result of that.
If you said before COVID, there's a global pandemic, what's going to be the biggest issue? Not being able to buy toilet paper would not be the top of my list.
No. Would it be now, though?
It would be. People have learned, but no, you still know we're going to go back. Anyway, that's on a massive aside.
I think on that note, I think we brought that to a hell of a conclusion, Chris. What do you think?
Absolutely. I didn't necessarily expect us to end with toilet roll.
No, but Well, on that note, thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us today and giving us some insights into a highly complicated world. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Great. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Now, we end every episode of this podcast by asking our guests what they're excited about doing next. And that could be something in your personal life, like got a great restaurant booked at the weekend, or it could be something in your professional life, or a bit of both. So, Chris, what are you excited about doing next?
Well, I'm very excited that I've got tickets for the Women's Rugby World Cup semi-final.
Oh, very cool.
Very cool.
Bristol.
Yeah,
so
very nice.
I'm based in Gloucester in the west of England, rugby country. And so having the World Cup in the UK or in England's been fantastic. Hopefully, will be England in that semi-final. Apologies to your Scottish listeners.
What's their form?
It's been fantastic through the tournament so far. I think including possibly the record points scored in a World Cup match.
Right.
So yeah, really looking forward to taking my dad and my two children to
wonderful.
That'll be a great day out
in 10 days.
Amazing.
If you would like to discuss any of the issues on this week's show and how they might impact you and your business, please get in touch with us at cloudrealities@capgemini.com. We're all on LinkedIn and Substack. We'd love to hear from you, so feel free to connect and DM if you have any questions for the show to tackle. And of course, please rate and subscribe to our podcast. It really helps us improve the show. A huge thanks to Chris, our sound and editing wizards Ben and Louis, our producer Marcel, and of course to all our listeners. See you in another reality next week.